Hi, I'm Doug Fee. Welcome to another edition of Dish It Out here at Mercer County Community College at our Culinary Center, where we offer both credit and non-credit classes. And my special guest today is Wendy Jager. Wendy,
hi,
welcome.
Doug. Thank you.
And Wendy, you specialize in Mediterranean cuisine specifically?
Provençal cuisine.
Okay, and
Southern
what is that?
French.
Okay.
Primarily the southern region of France and northern region of Italy along the coast.
And you get to spend, when you're not here, you spend a lot of time there?
I do. I have a business called Bliss Travels, and I design culinary vacations and culinary educational travel, primarily in the south of France, although I'm looking at expanding to Burgundy.
Excellent.
And I do some trips to Paris as well.
Excellent. And sometimes if you have a spot to fill, you know who to call, right?
Absolutely.
All right. I like those pro bono things. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do we have today?
Well, today we're going to make something I actually had in France this summer with a well-known chef in the region, Rennes Samu, and it is zucchini ribbons al pesto. And the zucchini is treated like pasta, and it holds up very nicely, and it tastes quite a lot like pasta. And we're going to make that with chilled tomato soup and a goat cheese garnish, which is also very southern French. And in this case, we're also going to grill lamb loin chops. But this dish, this combination of flavors could be served with anything: grilled fish, chicken. The star here is really the vegetables, and that's true in southern France, as you know.
Good. So someone like my wife who doesn't like lamb can say, no, I can do it, just change it out, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And
we're fired up and ready to rock.
And so we're just going to use a grill pan, and this has been marinated in a coarse sea salt, this lamb chop, and herbes de Provence. And we're going to stick it on a hot grill, and we're going to cook it for 3 to 4 minutes, and it's going to depend on the thickness of the meat. We're not going to move it because we're going to get grill marks on it, and we're going to flip it over, and then if it's very thick, I like to also cook it on its side, which I'm just like this for a bit to brown that. We're going to take this and put this on the back burner and let this finish.
Finish that off in the back?
Yep. And while that's happening, we're going to make our tomato soup. And this is about the easiest thing you can make. We're going to put a pot on, which we put some olive oil in, and we're going to quarter tomatoes.
And what kind of tomatoes we have here?
These happen to be tomatoes off the vine. Any tomato that you get, very red, very juicy, very ripe, more sugar in it is going to produce a better flavored soup.
So in technical terms, we want the pretty ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can get these fabulous heirloom tomatoes now. They're calling ugly tomatoes.
Well, see, to a chef, that is pretty.
Yes, that's true. And all we're going to do is take them and put them in the pan with a little bit of oil, roasted clove of garlic, and a little bit of sugar. And the amount of sugar is really going to depend on how ripe and how juicy your tomatoes are. And in this case, we put several in the pan already. And I don't know if you can see this, but in this case, they've been cooking about 15 minutes, which is what you're going to want, till they're softened and they get sort of a deep, deep red look to them. And then all we do is we add some water to it.
Now, you didn't seed these tomatoes. Is that the traditional style?
You know, I've done tomato soup and gazpacho a variety of ways, and this is actually based on a southern French recipe that Patricia Wells wrote. And I don't think you can do much better than her.
No.
So, no, she does not seed them. And what we do in this case is we cook the tomatoes for another about 20 minutes, although the timing of this is not particularly precise. And then we stick my favorite kitchen gadget in, which is an immersion blender. And when they're soft, they'll blend very easily. We do have 1 raw tomato in here, so that might make a bit of a mess. And we're going to blend this soup completely.
Well, you're wearing a red apron. Is there something that I should have known before I watched you do this?
I am so sorry I didn't mention that. And we're just going to blend this and let it cook. And I so recommend doing this a day before, because the flavors meld and the soup becomes so much nicer when you do that.
Let me set this on to simmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. Our soup is just going to cook for a bit, and we'll go to the zucchini ribbons. There are a couple ways to do this. You can use a lovely mandolin, or you can use a really inexpensive slicer. I don't know about you, but I don't adore high-end kitchen products. I think you can make almost the same thing with Lassin in the south of France. That's what we end up with. We don't have huge professional kitchens like this to work with.
I've seen some mandolins that are actually scary.
Yes. But in this case, this can be done probably more than 2 ways, but I'm going to show you 2 ways today. We just take a whole zucchini and we'll trim it. We're going to take the slicer, which is set on the thinnest setting, and I'm just going to move this over a bit so my hand doesn't hit it. And we're going to slice along several slices. And then we're just going to pull the slices out, stack them, and then we can use our knife to cut the zucchini to the thickness that we want, the width that we want. So you might want to go and have a dish that's fettuccine width. You might want to go for something that's more like linguine. And you're just going to cut along. This is raw zucchini, by the way. It does not need to be cooked. If, when you put your pesto on, you want a softer product, put your pesto on an hour or 2 in advance.
Right.
And then you can
soak it up.
Spend time with your guests. And all that happens when you're done is you end up with these very, very thin ribbons, like so. And it's nice if you can get the green edge around it. I think it makes it prettier. So
now, how far in advance could you do this?
You can do it in the morning for that evening. And in fact, you can do it the day before if you don't put any sauce on and keep it refrigerated. The other way to do it is to cut the zucchini into pieces. You want to stay away from the seeds and the core because that doesn't hold up.
Right.
There's no flavor reason for it, but and then you can just slide the pieces along the same kind of slicer, and you don't have to use your knife afterwards. There's really no secret to it, and if you can come up with a better way of doing it, that's fine. And we have a bowl that we've already prepared yesterday, so we have that full of these little ribbons. And all we're going to do is make a pesto, which is basil, Parmesan, a little bit of lemon, some garlic, olive oil, and some salt. So we're going to take a clove of garlic, and we're going to use the flat edge of our knife.
A lot of people tend to get lazy. They chop garlic in a jar, and there's no substitute for the real thing.
No, I don't think there is either. One thing I really like to do with garlic is I like to roast it and use roasted garlic for almost every recipe that calls for raw garlic. It gives it such a warm and sweeter flavor, I think, than the raw garlic. So we're just going to stick a clove, that was a large clove, so the equivalent of 2 cloves in. We're going to take several ounces of cheese, Parmesan, in this case, put that in. I like to put a little lemon in. And then we're just going to, I'm going to take the top off and put the basil leaves in. We should have several ounces of that.
Now, do you ever make your pesto well ahead of time and then freeze it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You want to get the basil while your garden's ready and there's plenty of it around?
Yep, and you can freeze it in little ice cube trays and then have individual servings to use for a soup au pistou, for example, or a regular pasta dish. And we're just going to grind this up and add oil till we get the desired thickness. You don't want to do this too long because you don't want to warm the basil too much and cook it too much. And I think for our purposes that's pretty good, and we'll just add a little salt to it.
And what kind of salt do we have here?
I really love coarse sea salt in almost every recipe because I like to get that crunch of salt separate from the flavor. It's different when you bake, but...
Right. Not only does it add more texture, but it adds some different flavors from the minerals from whatever water that sea salt came from. Okay.
And now we're going to take this off and we're going to toss the pesto with our pasta.
I'll take that.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll just borrow this little plastic spoon to help it on. You can make this pesto thicker if you prefer. I think with the vegetables as opposed to the pasta, it's kind of nice to have this a little bit thinner of a sauce. And all we're going to do is toss this up. Additionally, I'm going to blend the tomato soup a bit more. I know it was fighting back because it was hot.
Now, the style of cooking that you do seems much more laid back. A lot of people get too technical when they're worried about cooking food, they're almost afraid to do things.
I agree with you. You know, it's interesting. If you go to a restaurant, everybody's a restaurant critic and can tell you exactly what's wrong with their dish. But when people get in their own kitchens, they can't seem to trust themselves. And I talk to so many people when I teach classes who say, was that 2 tablespoons or 1.5 teaspoons, or how much did you put in there exactly? And what I would like, at least when I teach classes, what I would like people to see is that it really depends on what their tastes are. Use your own senses. Look at it. Does it look pretty? Does it look like there's too much sauce, too little sauce? Taste it. Add. If something doesn't sound right in a recipe to you, don't put it in. Put in something that sounds better to you.
Exactly. And if that philosophy sounds good to you, you can actually take one of Wendy's classes here at the Culinary Center at Mercer County Community College.
And I mean, that's specifically why in preparing this dish with you, I didn't discuss that this was 2.5 ounces of basil, or this was a teaspoon of sugar in the tomato soup, because it really shouldn't be. You should be tasting everything as you go along and deciding what it is it needs. And that's really the best way, too, to develop your palate and become a good cook.
And use a tasting spoon, not your fingers. We don't like that. We're sanitation zealots here.
And several tasting spoons if you're going to taste it.
Absolutely. No double dipping.
Right. I'm just going to grab the tomato.
And this really does look like pasta. I mean, I'm just thinking of some kids I know. I can set this in front of them, tell them we have pasta, and then afterwards tell them, oh, by the way, that was zucchini.
That was not, yeah. And in fact, my children will eat that. You have to give your kids credit. Perhaps they will try more than you think they will. Okay. And we're done with our soup, and we're going to get our lamb.
Okay.
The lamb, I say cook 3 to 4 minutes on one side before turning it. You can always cook it additionally, but you don't want to move it when you first cook it because you want to have those nice grill marks on it. So we're going to put zucchini on our plate. And you can serve this, I'm going to plate this 2 different ways, because this is also a great summertime vegetarian dish, or can be served family style. Thank you very much. We're going to garnish it with some pine nuts, which if you prefer the flavor, you can toast.
Which a lot of people just often throw way too much into the pesto, and if you're not a big fan of them, you
or
turn
if you
some
have
people
people
off.
with nut allergies, you can still make this dish and not have an issue. And then I just took little grape tomatoes. If you can find the yellow ones as well, that's very nice because you get a lot of color contrast. And just cut them into 6 or 8 wedges depending on the size of the tomato. And we'll place these around as a garnish. And we'll take a couple of small basil leaves.
A lot of people get careless when it comes to garnish, and it's so nice to see people garnish with things that are actually in the dish, as opposed to, you know, I put a big sprig of rosemary there and stick it up so it's 3 feet high.
Yeah, but people don't think of garnish as adding to the flavor, or even, in fact, advertising what the product is that you're going to be putting into your mouth, right? And then we're just going to do our tomato soup. We'll ladle that out. This plate that I'm ladling the soup onto would be a great dinner plate. And I really envision the plate that just has the pesto on it as either a family-style side dish that comes into the center of the table, or as something you would have just as a light lunch with maybe some bread on the side. And then we're going to take our lamb chops, and we're going to put those on the plate. And we have some goat cheese to put on top of our tomato soup, which in this case is still warm. I personally prefer this soup cold.
Again, something easier if you make it the day ahead. Make it easier when you have guests or company.
Absolutely, and it keeps for a week. It's tomato, so. And then we have our dish.
That is beautiful.
Well, thank you, and hopefully delicious.
We'll find that out soon enough. If you're interested in learning more about something like this, you can visit us online at www.mccc.edu/HRIM, and click on our What's Happening tab to learn about our classes and learn more about what's going on here both on a credit and non-credit side. So, Wendy, thank you very much, Chef. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. And I look forward to teaching one of these in our carry-out cooking classes.
You may have some requests for this, so come take Wendy's class here at the Culinary Center at Mercer County Community College. You will not be sorry.
College. Over 60 majors to choose from. Discover your unique path and turn your passion into a career. Follow your unique path here at Mercer County Community College.
Kids, here's my favorite animal. Strong, intelligent, ethical, dependable, compassionate, and patriotic. By the way, where's John?
Intelligent, strong, ethical, dependable, compassionate, and patriotic.
When you help your neighbors, you help your nation. Make a difference. Volunteer. Learn how at usafreedomcorps.gov.
When I was senator, I did a lot
After that, I was able to orbit the Earth in a great big rocket ship.
Jonesy kitty, Jonesy cat. She is my kitty. She is my squiddy. She is my Jonesy. She is my Jonesy cat. She is my cat.
Things can get pretty ugly when you're bored. In an after-school program, you can find something way better to do.
I like to volunteer with the Neighborhood Emergency Response Team to help the firefighters. As you know, I was Fireman of the Year 3 times.
You're Mariano Rivera.
Thank you.
Fireman of the Year is a baseball award.
Yes.
You're not actually a fireman.
No.
Fireman of the Year, huh?
Just a few more minutes.
When you help your neighbors, you help your nation. Make a difference. Volunteer. Learn how at usafreedomcorps.gov.
Hi, I'm Doug Feet, coordinator of the hospitality programs here at Mercer County Community College. And I'd like to invite you down to the Culinary Center here at Mercer County College, where you can enjoy great facilities and expand your culinary horizons. You can do that in a number of ways. We offer many one-session and series classes on how to cook. Whether it's basic or advanced, we have classes for you. You get to come and play and cook, and best of all, you don't have to do the dishes. Learn real authentic cuisine, such as international cuisine, from chefs who learn their trade there. So come see us, check us out at mccc.edu/HRIM and see all that we have to offer. You'll be glad you did, and I hope to see you there.
You're unique, so are we at Mercer County Community College. Over 60 majors to choose from. Discover your unique path and turn your passion into a career. Small classes and enthusiastic professors. Follow your unique path here at Mercer County Community College.
Welcome to another edition of Ask Frank, where we'll have some culinary tidbits for you at home, and you can also have your questions answered. Today's culinary tip is regarding something called roux, R-O-U-X. When it's time for that holiday dinner and you're making a gravy, or even a typical Friday night and you want to make yourself some brown sauce, some Espanol sauce, something we teach all of our students in our Food Preparation 1 course is how to make roux, the most common thickening agent used for things like soups and sauces. So today I'm going to show you how to make a roux. This is going to be, there's 3 types of roux, white, blonde, and brown. And what's going to distinguish those is the amount of cooking time. It'll start off at a white roux at about a minute or so, has a wet sand type look to it, and then it'll go on to a blonde roux and eventually a brown roux and start getting that nutty type smell to it. One of the things, the culinary tip of the day when making roux is typically most people use clarified butter. It's half fat and half flour is what a roux is. Most people use clarified butter and flour to make their roux. Today I'm going to use some leftover veal fat. We make our own stocks in our food preparation 1 class, and then as a stock, when it cools, it forms a layer of fat. You've probably seen this on a soup or a stock. And instead of throwing that away, it's a lot cheaper than butter, right? It's free at that point, and butter could be $3 a pound. So again, we can be cheap here. But the flavor is also going to be so much better because if we're making a sauce for our veal, a brown and Espagnole sauce, for our veal chop, wouldn't it be better to have the veal fat as the underlying flavor rather than the clarified butter? So it's economical, but it's also going to taste better. So I have this veal fat that's heated up, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is whisk in some flour. Remember, it's about half fat to half flour. We're just going to stir that in. You can measure it, but basically you just want to get it to that wet sand type consistency, just so your flour's getting cooked through. You don't want to eat any raw flour, and especially serve that to your guests. It's important when you're making a roux and you're using a roux that you let your roux get room temperature so that you're not adding that hot roux to a hot stock or a hot sauce, because that's how you get those traditional lumps, come Thanksgiving time or the holiday time. No one really wants those lumps, do they? So at this point, it's getting to that wet sand type consistency. If I want to have my white roux there, I don't need to cook it a whole heck of a lot more because that flour is just about cooked through. And I'm whisking through all the way because I want to make sure that it stays nice and smooth on me and that all those bits of flour get incorporated with the fat and whisked in and cooked together. So you can see the type of consistency that's turning to. May not look the most appetizing, but remember, it's not a side dish. We're just using this as a thickening agent for our sauces and our stocks. So now you know how to make roux. Come this holiday season, when you want to thicken that sauce up, you can make some white, blonde, or brown roux, depending on the color sauce. And remember, the more you cook that, the less thickening power it's going to have. So a white roux is going to be the most thickening power versus a brown roux that's going to have the least amount. And we have some nice veal flavor in there as an underline. So that's your culinary tip of the day. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Ask Frank. And remember, send your emails to us at feed@mccc.edu. Also, come join us for a class, whether it be credit or non-credit. We'd love to see you soon. So remember, don't ask your neighbor, ask Frank.
Every trip, every time.
California, here I come!
Buckle up so you and your friends get home safely.
I must scream into the world from the top of someplace very high.
Seatbelts save lives.
Okay.
Visit nhtsa.gov.
Low and slow.
Best friend, what are you going to do?
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
That is spectacular advice.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Daddy, why is the sky blue?
Well, to match your pretty eyes.
Nope, not even close. See, all colors have wavelengths that are diffused by oxygen and nitrogen. Since blue is the shortest wavelength, it's diffused up to 10 times more.
Who taught you that?
Mommy?
By age 12, too many girls lose interest in math and science and their chance at future jobs. Keep her interest alive.
You know why mathematics is the basis of life as we know it?
You tell me.
It's her future. Do the math.